Today we have a special guest, and we will be talking about economic issues and also the Federal Reserve. This is Danielle DiMartino Booth. She is the CEO and Chief Strategist of Quill Intelligence. It's an LLC. She's also an insider for the Federal Reserve, and she's also been an author of many books. So Danielle, first of all, thanks so much for coming on the program. Greatly appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here today.
All right, so can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and what made you get into finance in general?
I've always been a fan of the markets. I got my MBA in finance, and the allure of New York and Wall Street drew me to a career in finance. So it was just a career path that I chose serendipitously.
All right. And with that said, you know, we talk about the Federal Reserve, and that's something we're going to speak about today in general. A lot of people that are in their teens, 20s, and 30s, as far as millennials go, you know, when they think about the Federal Reserve, they, you know, speak about Ron Paul. He spoke about auditing the Fed. But a lot of Americans in general, even if they're not millennials, don't even know what the Federal Reserve is or what even it does. Can you educate the viewers a little bit on what it is and what it does?
Sure. So developed economies have central banks. In 1907, JP Morgan, there was a financial crisis in 1907. JP Morgan brought a bunch of people into his home at the time and said, you know, I can't do this forever. I'm going to die one day. So, and we're a developed enough economy that we merit having a central bank in the event of these massive financial disruptions. And central banks have also always been tasked with trying to make sure that the money that you earn retains its power, its buying power. So one of the Fed's mandates is to minimize inflation, and the other Fed mandate is to maximize employment. So that is what they're charged with doing, and their traditional tool has been interest rates. If it's cheaper to borrow things, then they want businesses and consumers to spend more. The 30-year conventional mortgage rate, I heard yesterday, it was 1.99%. So the Fed is encouraging individuals to get out and buy homes. And so that means that the transmission mechanism is working in theory, as we're seeing housing boom right now. They're having a much harder time with maximizing employment. But again, that is what they're charged with doing, and then ensuring financial stability, as JP Morgan said years and years ago, in the event that there's some kind of a calamity in the stock market.
So they just had the last meeting with the Federal Reserve Chairman, Mr. Powell. Can you talk about what your opinion was on that meeting?
Well, I'm a well-known critic of the Fed, and it was interesting that Jay Powell had been talking for weeks about needing, about allowing inflation to run hot. Those have been the words that have been bubbling about, and that just means that they want that they were going to allow inflation to run above their 2% target. And the way you think about a 2% target is it's kind of idiotic. You know, if you want 2% inflation every year, that means that in 50 years your money's gone. So, you know, you cut the value in half. Anyways, the Fed came out at the meeting, and they projected out to the year 2023 that they didn't see inflation getting any higher than 1.7%. So the market was kind of confused by this, because they're saying we're going to let it go over 2%, and yet for years out we don't even see it hitting that target. Ben Bernanke, who preceded Janet Yellen at the Fed, he imposed the 2% target. It was very controversial at the time in January of 2012, and the Fed has only hit that target 11 months since then. So it's an interesting time at the Fed, but their policy is not, in their words, very efficacious.
All right, and this is Danielle.
They're good at propping up the stock market, though. Very good.
Right, and I want to get into that, because we see people that on Main Street are not doing really well right now. There are people that are going back to work. A lot of people my age that are just graduating for college, you know, maybe have a master's degree, but they're loaded in student debt and that's a big crisis in our country right now. But if they don't have their job now because of the COVID crisis, and then got their hours cut, a lot of people my age are moving back in with their parents. Do you see that it's going to be a huge issue? Obviously, to go on to that, as I said, with student loans too.
Yeah, look, we are in the midst of a financial crisis. It's just kind of a quiet crisis because the stock market is so high. But that doesn't do anything for the 45% of Americans who don't own stocks. So, and to your point, in census data back to the beginning of time, we've never, including in the aftermath of the Great Depression, we've never had 52% of individuals between the ages, I think, of 18 and 29 living with their parents. So this is not the way that economies are supposed to evolve. You're supposed to graduate, find a job, get married, buy a house, settle down, have kids, and grow the economy. That's kind of the general process in life. That's not happening. And the student debt situation is also very problematic. College tuition has been going up at much too fast of a pace for these past few decades. And a lot of that has been fed by the fact that they know that the student loans are so easy to access that they can just keep up, they can keep rising tuition. So it's, there are a lot of impediments for millennials on down. And, it's unusual to see younger generations not anticipate earning more money than their parents did. That's not the way nature is supposed to work.
Right, that's what I'm really scared about. How is that going to affect the economy now with that money not being pumped down to Americans that are going to put it right back into the economy?
It's very problematic, but right now politics is just toxic. Yeah. We're a matter of just a few weeks away from an election, and with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it looks like Washington, they've kind of got a bigger fish to fry. So they're more concerned with that, engaging in that battle, when that's what it is right now up on the Hill, than looking to what's really important to Americans, which is the economy and passing stimulus legislation. Now, stimulus legislation is something we've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks because nobody thought that it would go as far as it has. And now we're seeing that, so there were 22 million jobs lost in the aftermath of the shutdowns. But what we're starting to see is that it's looking like up to half of those jobs might become permanent job losses. So, the government needs to not just be looking into giving people money, but a lot of people out there are going to need to be trained with a new skill so that they can move on into a different industry if need be. We need a lot more action coming from Congress. I mean, there are potholes in New York City that you could drive a small car into and lose it. So, infrastructure spending is clearly overdue, bridges, tunnels, you name it. And, there are a lot of people who are out of work who've got the skill set immediately that you could put to work with such endeavors. The New Deal under FDR that was created in the aftermath of the Great Depression, that was building a bunch of things. That was building the Hoover Dam. That was building the Lincoln Tunnel. It built the Golden Gate Bridge. That's great because we weren't built out enough at the time. But right now, we just need repairs to be done. So it's just amazing to me that this has been discussed since Bill Clinton was in office, and then Obama, and now Trump. And you can't get Congress to do something that is so sensible and puts their constituents to work.
Agreed 100% on that. I do want to speak about another issue that I believe is going to be a huge crisis. I believe you spoke about this on Fox News a couple of days back. And I think this is a huge crisis. I'm in Florida right now. We see a lot of people, and even all over the country, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with the statistic, I think half of the country, or at least close to half, is renting right now. So what is going to happen now with, again, people don't have work. We're seeing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, people don't work. A lot of these private equity firms are buying up these properties, such as Blackstone has done. So with that going on and people not being able to pay their rent, we're going to see a homeless crisis coming now in this country. And I think that's going to be a huge problem. Do you agree with that, rather?
Look, we've already got riots in the streets. It's not even something theoretical to talk about anymore. And a lot of it comes down to income inequality. So, you know, when I was at the Fed, I was at the Fed for 9 years, there was a lot of internal debate going on. And at the time I was saying, you can't let all these investors come in and buy these homes. They're going to charge above market rents, which they have. And you know, with interest rates at 0%, a lot of developers, the only way that they could make the math work was to build luxury properties. Well, guess what? We can't all afford luxury high-rise apartments. We can't all afford luxury homes. And yet that's really what has been built. So now you have this massive disconnect between a lack of housing that is truly, and I'm not saying affordable for people, you know, making a minimum wage. I think housing is not affordable for people who have regular jobs and careers. So I think that's one of the things that really has kept a lid on the birth rate in this country, and millennials settling down later in life and you know, waiting to start families. A lot of it comes down to how expensive housing is. And right now, millions of families are hanging by a thread by virtue of these rent moratoriums that are set to expire. So you could, if you think that we've got social unrest now, you just wait until people start getting kicked out of their houses.
Right. Do you believe this will get worse than 2008?
You know, it's hard to say. I think that the ingredients are there.
Yeah.
In 2008, you know, we had households that were over levered. Households had too much debt. You know, if you could fog a mirror, you could buy a house. So mortgage lending standards were too loose. But now it's really corporate America that has put too much debt on their balance sheet, and they're over leveraged. And that's why we're seeing as many bankruptcies as we're seeing. But unlike in prior cycles, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of these bankruptcies leading straight to liquidations where they just close up shop. Because again, there was so much debt that there wasn't enough value that could be extracted in the bankruptcy process. That's very unfortunate, but the fact is we do have more leverage today than we had in 2006, 2007. So you could certainly paint a scenario where things could get worse, especially because of the sheer number, 26 million Americans collecting unemployment benefits in some form. And again, the additional stimulus is, the clock is ticking on that, completely running out the pandemic PUA, pandemic unemployment assistance, which was for gig workers, contract employees, 1099s. That's set to expire in December. So, you know, again, everything we speak about, it seems like all roads lead back to Washington, D.C., and the need for the politicians really to put their heads together and come up with new kinds of stimulus legislation, again, not to just throw money at people, but for productive endeavors that are going to help the economy grow.
Yeah, I have two more questions, and this is Danielle DiMartino Booth here on Fire Breathing Rob. Are we ever going to see any kind of interest rate within maybe the next year or two that it will get up to 2 or 3% like it was not that long ago?
It's hard to believe, but in 2001, you could get 5% by just putting your money in a savings account, and people are like, "Oh, wow, 5%." But it's the Fed has already said that it's going to keep interest rates low for longer than it ever has before. It's an open-ended commitment on the Fed's part, and you know, as good as it is, if you want to take out a mortgage, it's extremely problematic for savers. One of the hardest ideas to convey to young people is the importance of saving money, because, you know, if they're not following Dave Portnoy and buying options with it and day trading, and they maybe want to be a little bit more conservative, they're like, I can't make anything if I save it. If I save it in something safe, why would I save money if I can't make anything on it? So it's really difficult to convey to young people the importance of saving money when they start their careers out.
Where do you think people that are millennials that do want to put their money away, should they put it in the stock market? Should they put it in something like a Vanguard account? Or should they just keep it in, you know, a regular bank account?
I mean, it's, in theory, you've got so much runway in front of you with being so young that you can invest in the stock market and make a decent return over time. But you know, that being said, it doesn't matter what age you are. If you put money into the most overvalued stock market in the history of the country and watch it get, you know, cut quite a bit, that's really going to upset you. It doesn't matter what age you are. So my concern would be that young investors would be turned away from the stock market if they lose too much money. So at this juncture, I think it's more important to focus on getting a return of your money instead of what you're going to get making on it. So, something that is more conservative would certainly fare better, at least until we get through what is very visibly a very destructive time in our nation's history. And if there's one thing that is the enemy of the stock market, if you will, that's uncertainty. And it's one of the reasons that we're seeing such increased volatility in trading every day. It's because the market's like, what are these yahoos in Washington, D.C. doing? So uncertainty is no friend, but there is something to be said for owning gold. I know a lot of younger people like the idea of Bitcoin, but I think now is a time to be a little bit more conservative in your approach. You'll know when the stock market is a greater value than it is today.
Danielle, I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the money from the CARES Act, a lot of that pumped into the stock market? So that's why it's gotten up to as high as it's gotten to right now?
Yeah, we have never not even in before you were born, 1999, 1998,
Right.
we've never seen this kind of, we call them retail investors, the small investors. And now that there's the ability to take one share of Amazon stock and slice it into many pieces, or play the puts and the calls, a ton of young people follow Dave Portnoy like it's a cult. And they're bored, they've got money in their hands, they're in their parents' house, they're like, so they turn off their video game and they start playing in the stock market. We've never seen this kind of volume of small investors ever, ever, ever. It's multiples of what it's ever been in the past. And it's been a huge generator of some of these outsized returns that we're seeing. But again, the one thing I can say about them is that, if they do incur losses, at least they're in the right place because they're home with mom and dad. So they got a roof over their head.
And I agree with you 100% with that. But don't you see that bubble is going to crash pretty soon? I mean, we're over time. I think that a crash is usually every 8 to 10 years, correct? And we're way over that.
There's no timing a crash, and that's one of the reasons that the Federal Reserve is asking Congress to pass more stimulus legislation. They're like, if you sell the debt, we'll buy it. And there's been an 82% correlation or co-movement between the growth of the Fed's balance sheet, the amount of quantitative easing, the amount of treasuries and mortgages that they're buying and putting on their balance sheet. There's an 82% correlation with the growth of the Fed's balance sheet and that of the stock market. So the market loves liquidity.
But why is no one worried about China right now as far as buying all this debt with that? I mean, $1.1 trillion. It seems like no one really gives a damn in Washington, and China's just getting more powerful. I mean, you talked about investing in roads and bridges and green energy. China's doing all that. They're pumping their money in, and we're not doing a damn thing, and they're just really kicking our ass in plain English.
Yeah, China has first world infrastructure. We have third world infrastructure. It's scary. I mean, people are like, ooh, the Excella. And I'm like, okay, we don't know. We don't have a bullet train in the United States. So there's something very real to be said about that. But more importantly, the Chinese are kicking our ass, as you say, in artificial intelligence, in the next generation of 5G. And these are really important because they are the industries, the growth engines of future economic growth. And those are the areas that we need to be focused on and concentrating in. And we're not to a good enough extent. We don't educate our children in this country very well, and we don't emphasize STEM studies, and they do. And it is what it is. But there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that a true politician, a true patriot, a true American would look into. We've got to be number one in these fields, and we've got to repair our infrastructure. And otherwise, we're going to wake up in 10 years and not be the biggest economy in the world anymore. And that's a risk.
And I feel like it's going to happen because the gridlock in Washington, the stupidity in Washington on
Mhm.
both sides of the aisle in
Both sides.
general. Uh,
They're equally stupid. I agree.
I agree too. Can you give, to end the interview, some advice to millennials of maybe, something that you're seeing as far as economic issues that, is on the up and up that we can kind of build on, because it is a Debbie Downer world for people my age and younger.
Well, look, if you have the opportunity, don't kick yourself if you are living with your parents. But I think that because small businesses have been put out to dry, that I'm hoping that your generation is going to be the next group of major entrepreneurs in this country, thinking of new ways. If there's one thing that we've learned from COVID, I've got 4 kids. I don't know that I'll ever go to the pediatrician's office again. I kind of like this whole telemedicine idea a lot. I mean, if my kid's bleeding, maybe, then we'll go to the hospital. But we've learned a lot about new ways of living. And I think that I think that the pressure should be on your generation to start up new companies and become the innovators and the entrepreneurs that are going to lead the economy in the future. And I hope that that's going to be the case, because small businesses are the backbone of America. And that's how small businesses grow to be medium businesses and gainful employers. So it's a wide world out there. We need innovators.
All right. Danielle DiMartino Booth, thanks so much for your time. It was truly amazing. I really enjoyed this and I learned so much, and I'm sure the viewers will also when they hear it.
Thank you very much. Take good care.